Hello students, I have started a new topic to teach you on the history of English literature based on the book of Routhledge. Okay, so let's start with the beginning of English literature. So I'll teach you from the beginning, from the old and middle English, which dates from 600 से लेकर है वो 1485 तक. So if you are reading the old English, it means you are just starting to read it, okay? Starting to read literature. So the first thing that you should know is what is literature. According to what is written in Routhledge, literature is as old as human language and as new as tomorrow's sunshine. Literature is everywhere, not only in books. ठीक है, सिर्फ लिटरेचर बुक्स में नहीं है बल्कि वो वीडियोस, टेलीविजन्स, सीडीज, कंप्यूटर्स, न्यूज़पेपर्स, हर वो मास मीडिया, हर वो चीज़ जिससे हम लोग को कोई स्टोरी पता चलता है. ठीक है, वेयर अ स्टोरी इज टोल्ड या फिर एक इमेज इज क्रिएटेड, दैट इज नोन एज लिटरेचर. सो अकॉर्डिंग टू वॉट इज रिटन इन रूथलेज, literature is as old as human language and as new as tomorrow's sunshine. Literature is everywhere, not only in books but in videos, televisions, radios, CDs, computers, newspapers, in all the mass media where a story is told or a image is created. आगे बढ़ते हैं. सो द फर्स्ट लिटरेचर, हर कल्चर का फर्स्ट लिटरेचर जो था, पहले तो कॉपी पेन्स नहीं होते थे, तो फर्स्ट लिटरेचर जो है वो ओरल होता था, बोल के होता था. सो द क्लासिक ग्रीक एपिक्स ऑफ होमर, होमर मीन्स होमर इज अ ग्रीक author. Okay, Homer is a Greek author and a epic poet. So the classic Greeks of Homer, guys, if you by chance you don't have Routledge book, please note it down. Okay, all the points are necessary. So हम इतना वर्क किए हैं, so you should all note it down that the classical Greeks of Homer, होमर मतलब समझे ना, होमर एक ग्रीक ऑथर है. ओके, सो हम लोग जब भी लिटरेचर का बात करते हैं तो वी टॉक फ्रॉम द बिगनिंग, फ्रॉम होमर. ओके, होमर टू कंटेम्प्रेरी, होमर टू दिस मॉडर्न एरा. सो हम लोग बात करेंगे क्लासिकल ग्रीक ऑफ लिटरेचर, होमर से लेकर. हम लोग जब बोल रहे थे कि लिटरेचर जो फर्स्ट शुरू हुआ वो ओरल शुरू हुआ, तो सो द क्लासिकल ग्रीक एपिक्स ऑफ होमर. I hope you know the meaning of epic. Epic is something which is long, a very long चीज़. जैसे कि महाभारत एक एपिक है. ओके, कुछ चीज़ जो कि बहुत लंबा हो, बहुत लॉन्ग हो, वो होता है एपिक. और बहुत लॉन्ग और क्लासिकल हो, पुराना हो, उससे हम लोग एपिक बोलते हैं. सो द क्लासिकल ग्रीक एपिक ऑफ होमर, या फिर कोई एशियन नरेटिव्स ऑफ गिलगामेश. Gilgamesh is also a epic poem, okay, epic poet writer, and the best known of all ancient Mesopotamian hero था वो गिलगामेश. ओके, सो जब हम लोग बात करें द क्लासिकल ग्रीक एपिक्स ऑफ होमर, उसके बाद द एशियन नरेटिव्स ऑफ गिलगामेश एंड द भगवद गीता, ये सब जो है दीज वर द वर्क्स. और या फिर बाइबल हम लोग ले ले, कुरान ले ले, ये सब जो है पहले क्या होता था, वेर कम्युनिकेटेड ओरली and were passed on from generations to generations, जिसमें with variations, additions या फिर omissions. Omissions means something which is removed. Omissions and embellishments until they were set down in written form. Okay, बहुत सारा वेरिएशंस है. ओरल में अगर हम लोग किसी को स्टोरी बताते तो ऑब्वियसली इट विल नॉट बी as I am saying to a person. I cannot say that the person will also say exactly the same line to the other. So obviously there were variations, additions, omissions. Okay, until they were written down in a, until they were written in a form. Okay, until they were written in a, until they were brought to written form. So yeah, in the versions which has come down to us, so that written versions have come down to us. Okay. So next is the oral literature tends to have three kinds of subject matter when we write or when we heard oral literature. So it contained three subject matter. First was, it talked about oral literature. Basically it will not have about any fashion sense. It will have, or it talked about religion, war, and the trials of daily life. After this we come to the Norman conquest. Okay, it's an important part, the Norman conquest, which started from 1066, from which we have the fragments of literary text. I don't think anything is more important here. Just remember the time period, the Norman conquest, which started from 1866. Okay, wait. I'll move on to Anglo Saxon. Okay, so first I want to tell you about how this British, how England, how Anglo-Saxon came there, how Anglo-Saxon started. Okay, Anglo-Saxon, at that time, English as a language was one of the most significant element over several countries. Okay, so let's see first the emergence of Anglo-Saxons. So, the tribes that were residing in Britain before Anglo-Saxons were known as Celts. Okay, point it down or write it down. It's not there, I think, in the Routhledge. So, write it down. The first who were residing in Britain were known as Celts. Celts were also known as Britons. Okay, Britons, Britons. So, let's see chronological wise. First, there were Celts who were also known as Britons. They were up to 55 BC. After Celts, there came the Roman conquest. There was a Roman conquest from 55 BC to 410 AD. After this, there was the Anglo-Saxon and Jutish invention. Okay, Anglo-Saxon and Jutes came. Invention from northwest Germany, and it dated from 410 AD to 793 AD. 793 AD. After Anglo-Saxon Jutes, there was a Vikings invasion in Scotland, the northern and eastern England, from 783 to 795 AD. Okay, after the Vikings invasion, they settled down. In 1802, the England was united by, or you can say under the King Albert of Wessex. England was again united. Then there was, after this Egbert or anything, then there was a Danish invention in 9th century. There was the partition in England. After this Danish invention, there was a partition of England under King Edward. England was partitioned, and then after the defeat of King Edward, after the death of, or after King Edward was removed, there were Norman conquest. Okay, so Norman conquest was started from 1066 AD. If you remember, if you remember or had taken the notes of Norman conquest, okay, here 1066. It started from 1066. Let's talk about Old English, Middle English. In Ruthless, there is the next topic, personal and religious voices. I told you that when they were having oral literature, there were three kinds of subject matter. They talked about three subjects. So first was religion, war, and then the trials of daily life. So when oral literature was there, obviously people talked about God. Okay. So next topic is personal and religious voices. The first work of literature was, or is known as the Cadmon's hymn. It dates from the late 9th. It dates that Cadmon's hymn dates from late 7th century, around 670. The story is this, that the Cadmon's hymn is that Cadmon. Who was Cadmon? Cadmon is the name of a worker. Okay, he was a lay worker. Lay means laborer. He was a laborer on the estate of monastery by Whitby. Okay, in Northumbria. Okay, so this Northumbria was the early medieval Anglo-Saxon kingdom, which is now in North England or southeast Scotland, you can also say. So when Cardamom was working as a lay worker, he heard a voice of God which came to him. Okay, here, so when the voice of God came to Cardamom, he wrote a hymn. Okay, so therefore this hymn therefore is the song of praise in English culture and the first Christian religious poem in English. Although at that time many Italian hymns were also produced, okay, and known as, which were most popular, but Cardamom wrote in English and this hymn was way popular. Okay, so before 14th century, I think in your syllabus there's still 14th to 17th century or something. So let's start with 14th century. So before 14th century, the Christian monks and nuns were the only people who could read and write. It was interesting, therefore, that most of the native English culture they preserved is not in Latin. Latin was the language of church, but was in Old English the language of Anglo Saxon and jutes. Okay, this English was brought up by Anglo Saxon and jutes. This Cardamom's hymn, like the Cardamom's hymn, the texts like Dior's lament. Okay, lament means a sad description on something, lamenting upon something. Okay, being sad. So Dior's lament, simply we can call it as Dior, or the seafarer. All the three things reflects on ordinary human experience and are told in first person. Okay, first person view means I, or we can also, okay, I. Although they express a faith in God, only Cardamom's hymn is an overly religious piece. Okay, it talked wholly on God. Okay, the seafarer described much of the day-to-day life of the seafarer and also reflects a close familiarity with contemporary interpretations of the plasm. द स्पीकर जो है दियोर्स लैमेंट में ही रीअकाउंट द दियोर लैमेंट ओके ना, वो रीअकाउंट करता है डे टू डे ट्रायल्स ऑफ लाइफ. जैसे सी फेरर, हम लोग का सी फेरर के बारे में डिस्कस करता है, डिस्क्राइब करता है, वैसे दियोर्स लैमेंट क्या करता है, वो डे टू डे ट्रायल, डे टू डे लाइफ में क्या हो रहा है उसके बारे में डिस्कस करता है. नेमिंग सेवरल हीरो के बारे में, सेवरल हीरो ऑफ जर्मनिक ओरिजिन एंड देयर सफरिंग्स with the repeated chorus, और वो एक chorus है, ये एक important chorus है, that evil ended so also may this. What is the chorus? That evil ended so also may this. This is the first poem in history, the Dior's Lament, which is about unemployment, but with a refrain that a bad times will pass. Okay, with a refrain करता है that bad times will pass. Then there is a quote written from the Dior's Lament से, वो book में लिखा है एक quote, that I don't think that will be important to you basically when you are studying this history portion. Okay, I don't think the quotes will be important, so let's just start with what's written after that. It's about, the next is the seafarer. Okay, the seafarer and the wanderer. The two books along with various other texts were preserved in the book known as the Exeter book, which is a manuscript, contains poetry which dates from the end of 10th century. It still is kept in Exeter Cathedral Library in Dublin. Like the Dior's Lament, these two poems are डियोर्स लैमेंट की तरह ये दोनों पोएम एलेजिक पोएम्स है ऑफ सॉलिट्यूड, जिस पोएम में जिसका थीम है सॉलिट्यूड, एग्जाइल एंड सफरिंग. एग्जाइल मीन्स बिछड़ना एंड सफरिंग. ओके, सॉलिट्यूड मीन्स अकेलापन, आइसोलेशन. आफ्टर ऑल दीज द लैंग्वेज मूव्स टूवर्ड्स टू अर्ली मिडिल इंग्लिश. ओके, द 13th century एंड देन द जॉनराज जो है, जो 13th century में ज़्यादातर बुक्स पाए गया, उन लोग किस जॉनरा पे थे? दे टॉक्ड अबाउट हिस्ट्री. ओके, ट्रांसलेशन ऑफ क्रिश्चियन बाइबल वॉज ऑल्सो डन, सच एज द बुक ऑफ जीनियसेस, a version of which was for a long time believed to be the work of Cardamom. This was translated from Saxons to Old English It uses local language and is a conscious attempt to strengthen the position of Christian faith throughout the island and to assert local linguistics. Linguistic means language, okay? So local areas जो है local linguistic and cultural identity. Okay, so the next text is the Dream of Rude, which is Old English, which is written in Old English, perhaps at the end of 17th century. Okay, so one fascinating feature which the Dream of Rude has is that the large number of words, phrases, and images used to describe a figure of Christ and his cross. So let's images क्या क्या use है यहाँ पे? A tree, a glorious gold cross, a simple bare cross, and a cross with a voice which speaks of its own transformation from tree to bearer of Christ. Okay, many texts of that time had reference to Latin hymns. Okay, so the Dream of Rude is a highly visual text which has full of joy, sufferings, okay, light है उसमें, darkness है, earthly reality है, heavenly bliss है, सब कुछ all in one है. Okay, so here the Anglo Saxon literature is full of images. The speaker in the seafarer में जो speaker है वो despite of his sufferings, as कुछ suffering जैसे कि my back was beaten by the breaking sea, he rejects land and the town, okay, because his heart is haunted by the love. I was disturbed a little bit. Let's start it from here. Okay, so the Anglo-Saxon literature is full of images. The speaker in the seafarer, despite of his suffering, as my back was beaten by a breaking sea, he rejects land and the town, okay, and his town, because his heart is haunted by the love of sea. Bark, यहाँ पर एक image use हुआ है, bark, which means the wood from which the ship was made, stands for the whole ship. Whole ship is defined as bark. He's with one word, okay, which stands for the whole ship. Haunted and takes the idea of a supernatural presence and places it in the speaker's heart. And the text in the oral tradition in Anglo-Saxon literature are all poetry. They were written down probably many years after they were first performed, probably on the stage. Most are short, okay, short poems. Beowulf is the only one long epic poem, very long. What they all have common in them is the verse form, double line with a break in the middle. So this is the end, and in my next video I'll start from the long poems. I'll continue to teach this Routhledge. So here we end this video. Thank you guys.